24 Policy and Government Relations Committee meeting of the School District of Waukesha Board of Education. I call this meeting to order. We'll start with general business, verification of meeting posting. Julie, can you please verify that the meeting has been properly posted?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. All right, next we come to the opportunity for citizens to speak. Do we have any requests to speak this evening?
No, we do not.
All right, very good, thank you. All right, with that, we can move into approval of minutes. Our first action item tonight is that minute approval from the August 12th, 2024 Policy and Government Relations Committee meeting. Any discussion, or do we have a motion to approve the minutes? Mrs. White?
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Okay,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Brooks. Any discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, minutes are approved 4-0. All right, we move into section 3, policy discussion and possible action. So tonight we will begin with 3 groups of statutory language alignment policies. So we're trying to align language to statute. We are looking at 30 policies in total since recently a federal court found that guidance documents issued in 2021 from the Department of Education have no legal effect in several states, including Wisconsin. So accordingly, it has become apparent that policy language adjustments made a few years ago contained inconsistent and irregular language across 30 different policies as it relates to sex, gender, and sexual orientation. As a result, Board President Piasek asked me, as the Policy Committee Chair, to work with Dr. Siebert to review the affected set of policies to ensure, 1, that the language is the same across all School District of Waukesha policies. Secondly, that the language is consistent with that of the state of Wisconsin. Third, that the language is consistent with the intent of the School District of Waukesha Board's Parental Rights and Transparency Resolution of January 2023. Fourth, that the language has clear source documents for definitions. And fifth, that the language does not create requirements or definitions for which there are no regulatory sources. So the committee will be asked to consider these changes to 3 different groups of policies tonight. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Siebert for specific discussion of those groups of policies.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Wad, and welcome everyone to the September Policy Committee meeting. Just finished day 5 of the school year, and it's rolling right along. So the changes that we're looking at this evening are founded in what Mr. Wad just read, and those 5 components that we're trying to address, so we have consistency in our language, and we can source our language within our policies and across all School District of Waukesha policies. So within this first group, we have 18 policies where we are looking to recommend language updates that are sourced directly from Wisconsin State Statute 118.13. And so what that language states is what's in yellow on your example in paper, as well as the examples in board docs. And the recommended language is sex, race, religion, national origin, ancestry, creed, pregnancy, marital or parental status, sexual orientation, or physical, mental, emotional, or learning disability. So again, that is directly from State Statute 118.13, and 118.13 is already referenced at the end of the 18 policies that we're talking about. So it does not require that adjustment. It just replaces the language that Mr. Wad referenced that no longer is valid in the state of Wisconsin with the state statutory language that can be easily and readily sourced. This information has been reviewed, but with our legal counsel. It's recommended by our legal counsel, and it's up for the committee's consideration.
Thank you, Dr. Siebert.
You bet.
All right, discussion, comments, concerns? Mrs. White?
So are these Neola recommendations then, or legal counsel recommendations?
They are not Neola recommendations.
They're not Neola
No,
recommendations?
No.
Okay.
When Dr. Piasek asked Mr. Watt and I to look into it, we worked with our legal counsel to source these statutory components into the policies.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I would entertain a motion for passage, or for consideration.
Motion to approve the revisions to these 18 policies to align with state statutory language as presented.
All right, motion by Mr. Brooks. Do I hear a second? Seconded by Mr. Borowski.
Second.
Any discussion? All right. If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 4-0. All right, Dr. Siebert, could you move to the second group?
Yes, I can, Mr. Wad. Let me just get to that in my packet here. So, thank you again. There are, in Group 2, 10 policies with the recommended language updates sourced directly from Wisconsin State Statute 111.321. So specifically, the language in that statute will read age, race, creed, color, disability, marital status, sex, national origin, ancestry, arrest record, conviction record, military service, use or non-use of lawful products off the employer's premises during non-working hours, or declining to attend a meeting or to participate in any communication about religious matters or political matters. So again, our legal counsel reviewed and recommended this common language that's sourced in state statute for the committee's consideration. I also want to note that one of the reasons they believe it is very strong is because the language is directly from the Wisconsin Fair Employment Act. And we have added in this first policy that you're looking at, which is 1220, employment of the superintendent, we've added state statute reference to 11-.321 at the end of the policy. And should you approve this set of policies, we will add 111.321 to the end of the additional 9 policies as well.
Thank you, Dr. Siebert. Discussion, questions? Mr. Borowski, did you have something that?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Anyone else? If not, I'd be looking for a motion for approval.
Motion to approve revisions to statutory alignment policies, or these 10 policies that in new language as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Borowski. Any further discussion? If not, we can proceed to a vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 4-0. All right, and I believe, Dr. Siebert, that leaves us with a third group of 2.
That is correct, Mr. Wad. Yes, so Group 3 contains simply 2 policies. And based on the changes that you've approved to legally source policies to state statute in Groups 1 and 2, the recommended language change in these 2 policies is to remove the word gender where it appears and replace it with the word sex for consistency and alignment with the other policies that have been improved. So this recommended change was also reviewed and supported by our legal counsel and is presented for the committee's consideration this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Siebert. Any questions? Discussion? All right. Seeing none, I'd look for a motion for approval.
Also move.
Motion by Mr. Borowski. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Brooks. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we can proceed to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 4-0. All right, thank you very much. That takes us now to item E, policy 8800 on religious activities and observances. And I believe this is a policy we referred back a couple months ago. So, Dr. Siebert, I'll turn it over to you for background and recommended changes.
Yes, certainly, my pleasure, Mr. Watt. So this is a policy that we have had before this committee previously, and we brought it first, I want to say, back in like August of 2023, Julie, if that, or makes, that's what I recall. And it was, we had a policy, 8800, this policy used to be religious and patriotic activities and observances, if I remember the title correctly. We broke off the patriotic based on a Neola recommendation from the religious, and the religious is tied directly to the Bremerton case in the state of Washington. So we approved the patriotic policy, I think back in August of 2023. This one we've been playing with a little bit to try and get the language right, and we think we might have found a way to do that, or at least for you to consider. And so everything in yellow has been the updates since August of 2023. The new part that we put in is the fourth paragraph of yellow that starts with the word nothing. If you draw your attention to that, and it reads, nothing in this policy, never mind. It is the slightly different, it's in the third paragraph of yellow, and it's in the slightly different font that starts with the word for example at the end of the third paragraph. So it reads, for example, nothing in this policy shall prohibit a coach from engaging in prayer or similar personal religious observances before or after athletic events while acting outside the scope of the coach's employment duties, and provided such observances are not required or expected of students and do not involve leading students in such observances. That's the point where we had been getting stuck, trying to figure out how do we know that happens. We want to have coaches and advisors and others feel comfortable exercising those rights. And there were some questions, parts of the other parts of the policy was, would they feel comfortable, right? Or would they feel as if they could do that? So I did work with our legal counsel to put that piece together. And I think, at least from my perspective, and Mr. Watt and I discussed it, we thought that it gets us closer to where we thought we wanted to be, but I certainly would entertain any questions you might have about it.
Thank you, Dr. Siebert. Questions, concerns?
I guess I do have one question.
Sure, go ahead, Mr. Rowski.
So for that statement that you just read, Dr. Siebert, basically, coaches are not prohibited from engaging in prayer or similar religious before or after events while acting outside the scope of their duties, right?
It's almost like, the way I think about it is, I'm wearing my coaching hat, right? I'm coaching the game, and then after the game, I want to go out to the 50 with maybe some other coaches,
Yeah.
and maybe there's kids from both teams. I'm essentially kind of removing my hat at that time, and now I'm acting as an individual, and I'm not mandating that my kids do that. I'm not trying to put them in a position where they feel like they have to, but I'm exercising my right, and then when I'm done with that, I'm putting my hat back on.
Sure.
And I'm back into my coaching role.
Yeah, and I appreciate that kind of visual clarification. I guess my question is, if we're allowing it outside the scope of their duties, and as long as it's not required or expected of students, then why would a coach not be allowed to then lead that observance? If it's outside their duties and they're not, and students aren't compelled to be a part of it, that last statement says does not involve leading the students in such observances. Not that I'm necessarily advocating for that, but I'm just wondering, if it's outside their scope and students aren't compelled to be a part of it, once everybody voluntarily does it, why is the coach not allowed to lead it?
It's a fair question. The way I was reading it and the way I was understanding it from working with our legal counsel was trying to make sure that the coaching position in and of itself yields a lot of authority. And so leading, meaning essentially like making kids think they have to, was the way I was reading it. Not like they can't be out there at the 50 and say the prayer, right? So, I mean, I think you're thinking of it as, and maybe we need to clarify the language, leading it at the 50, for example, versus leading a bunch of guys over to say, we're going to do this, or
Right.
them feeling as if they have no option than other to do it because he wants them to do it.
Right. I guess that's my question.
It's a good question.
And it might not be that important of an aspect to it, but I guess I could see that it could be, depending on what happens in the future.
So Dr. Siebert, my recollection was this language at the very end replaced something that you and I discussed where I had some concern. I don't know if you have the version that we spoke of before that, but I remember it having something to do with, I wish I could remember what the maybe I don't have it with me. But I think the intent was to try to get away from anyone feeling as though, number one, the mere presence of him or her saying a prayer meant that they were leading the person because they happened to be in the vicinity of it, even if they weren't participating.
Right.
But at the same time ensuring that it was clear that it's not okay for the coach to essentially bring people to that spot with providing some sense that there's even tacitly a requirement that they be there.
Yes.
Do you remember the language I'm talking about that we discussed? Do you remember what that?
I don't think we actually took any language out. We added this as an additional piece
Okay.
for the clarity around coaching that we've discussed a couple of times during our committee meetings.
Okay.
And I do appreciate that attempt to like make sure it's not in any way, well, I'm not coercing or forcing students to do it. I'm just thinking you said this was based on the Bremerton case, correct? Mm-hmm. And I probably, I guess I'm trying to recollect now. Didn't that coach lead the prayer in the sense of saying it? I guess I didn't review that ahead of time, but I'm trying to recollect off my memory from the previous. So
I thought the coach was by himself. I could be wrong about that. My recollection may not be any better, but
Yeah,
I thought it was the mere presence of him praying that was at odds in that case.
I believe you're right, yes.
So at any rate, like I understand, I kind of get your concern, Mr. Browski. The word leading, I think, could have different interpretations depending upon who's reading it. Whether leading suggests bringing people or compelling them to be present for the prayer, could be leading them to that spot, I think, which was
That was my
You were getting at
interpretation, but Mr.
versus
Borowski
leading
is
it,
very
which
good
is
too.
to be actually the one reciting the prayer for those that have voluntarily chosen to participate. So I'm wondering if there maybe is a different word we need to consider.
I almost wonder, if I might, this is another example of a school district of Waukesha edit, right? So we can kind of take it wherever we would like to take it. We might be able to stop right after, provided such observances are not required or expected of students. And that probably gets it done and avoids any confusion of the term leading.
Yeah, because it almost becomes sort of a redundant piece if that's what the reference is to, some sort of
Right.
sense there's, people are being compelled, right?
Right. And I think that gets across what it is that we're trying to say, right? It's okay for
True,
it to happen.
yeah.
We're just not, we don't want kids to feel pressured that they have to do it.
Anyone object to that language change?
I don't. So basically a period after students.
Yes.
Yeah. Great question, Mr. Borowski.
Yeah, I mean, just, it occurred to me as I was reading it, so I just thought I'd ask it.
Any other questions, comments on this policy 8800? Yes, Mrs. White.
Just a clarification on the second page of it, it references the idea of baccalaureate service. And I think it's important to have language to say that we're not participating in baccalaureate services anymore. Again, that's been an evolution during the course of my career when
Did we used to do those?
we used to have baccalaureate services.
Sure.
And have pastors, do the benedictions and say the prayers and all these sorts of things. It was an ongoing event. But in the last 20, maybe 18 to 20 years, it's evolved to being a senior activity, like a senior
Sure.
activity rather than a baccalaureate service. And it's definitely, I've seen the evolution happen, and I think it's finally now we have a policy that's saying that we're not going to conduct, direct, endorse, or sponsor or sanction a baccalaureate service. It's been hedging, along the way, and now it's in policy. So I think it's a good call.
Oh, good. Well, thank you for that.
Thank you, Mrs. Voigt. Anyone else have any comments, questions, more discussion on this item?
No.
All right, I would entertain a motion to,
I do have one more
Mrs. Voigt,
thing.
Yes, please.
I'm wondering if we should actually list the case, the Bremerton case, as one of the legal sources at the end. Since this is one of the things that we've, kind of taken that case example and using it to help to formulate our decision. It is a, Supreme Court reference that, along with the, statute references, we wrangled with this for several months based on this Supreme Court case interpretation. I think it'd be appropriate for it, to be included in here as well.
Sure. So if that's okay with the committee, we'll write it as Kennedy versus Bremerton School District.
Yeah, is that something we will do, in terms of our citing our references? I don't know that
We
I've seen
could.
that before, but
Yeah, we could. I don't think it hurts for us to have it in there.
I guess I don't either. I mean, it seems,
okay.
Especially since we're making the determination through our own SDW, translation of it. I think it's important to know what we were using as a guide.
Yeah, I think it's fine. If the committee is fine with it, it's fine.
Any objections to that?
no.
All right, any other discussion on the policy as presented and amended? All right, I would entertain a motion. Mrs. White?
I so move that we accept the policy as revised for religious activity and observances, policy 8800.
All right, moved by Mrs. White. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Brooks. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passes 4-0. All right, next up we have, let's see, policy 0171.3, clerk. Dr. Siebert.
Yes, yet another rerun here.
Yeah.
So we'll see, we've made some good changes, I think, based on our couple of discussions on this policy. And as you'll recall, we were getting a little spun up over the chief clerk of the board, which is Mr. Wad. And what we're now going to suggest and recommend we call the district clerk and change the name of the policy of the district clerk, which in our case is Sue. So this policy is about the district clerk, or the role that Sue currently plays. And so, you remember last time we kind of changed the order around and now we say the district clerk for the Board of Education, also known as the board secretary, so we changed that. Responsible for the following duties, and then we list the duties that she does, and we make a few statutory adjustments on the bottom, and we write School District of Waukesha edits. So this would be a name change of a policy, so that's one component, and then I think we just tried to make it cleaner based on the good discussions we've had in the committee, so that it's very clear that this is a different role than the one that Mr. Wad holds for the board.
All right, thank you, Dr. Siebert. Any discussion, questions?
The only thing I would mention is, should we just change the title to district clerk then, instead of clerk?
That is the recommendation, yes, that we would, if you approve it, the new name would be district clerk.
Okay,
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
It's kind of, in your packet, it's kind of funny because you can't really see the yellow, but the district and the,
yeah, I do see that there. Okay, I get not changing it in the title because it's not been approved.
yeah, we listed it as clerk because that's the current
Yeah.
policy. But our recommendation is to update it to a new term of district clerk.
I mean, other than that, it looks good to me, so.
All right. Anyone else? All right, I'd look for a motion to approve.
Also move.
So moved by Mr. Borowski,
I'll second.
seconded by Mrs. Voigt. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Policy passes. All right, that brings us to 0100 definitions, and I believe this is related, Dr. Siebert.
It is, Mr. Wad, yes. And it seems like we bring the definitions policy fairly often, too, where we have different updates to it. We actually have our next, not to get too far off, but we have our next Neola update on the 19th, so we'll have some more policies to distribute and move. The change here is simply what you just approved, which is adding the term district clerk into the definitions, so that it's clear that the district clerk is the executive assistant to the superintendent, also known as the board secretary. And then Mr. Wads is just the clerk, and he is identified as the chief clerk of the board. So it'll say clerk followed by district clerk to clearly define the differentiation within the roles.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Siebert. Any questions about that? Further discussion? Mrs. White?
I think it's a necessary thing to do based on what we just decided.
Good.
And I was just referencing the superintendent definition of, when there's a capital superintendent, it's that we had talked about at the previous meeting, that we
right.
didn't have to change all those policies, because it's right in here if you look back to definition.
With the delegated authority.
Delegation
yes.
of authority,
Right.
yes.
Yes, good point.
All right. Anything else? Yes, Mrs. White.
I so move that we make the change to definitions as stated here, based on the last policy approval.
All right, move for approval by Mrs. Voigt. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Brooks. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, passes 4-0. All right, thanks, everyone. Next, we move to our discussion and information items. We have one agenda item tonight that is related to legislative visits. Dr. Siebert.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Wad. So down to the government relations area, we have Senator Julian Bradley joining us this Thursday, September 12th. He'll be here at noon for any of you that can make it. And again, as always, understand your professional responsibilities and no worries. We will have a great conversation with him. I've met with him before, and he had us, Mr. Brooks, right, in the past, and then didn't have us, and now has us again with the new map. So we'll be excited to work with him. One of the things that I want to talk to him to bring us back to last meeting is Mr. Brooks pointed out that he works with the Artificial Intelligence Committee. So part of our discussion with him on Thursday will be around his work with artificial intelligence. And then we will come back to the committee per Mr. Brooks's request in October, and we'll talk about artificial intelligence in our committee. So we'll have what he's doing, we can talk about the policy that we have, and just the reality that it's here and it's probably here to stay, right? And so we need to be ready to work with it. But that's really all I have on the legislative visits. That'll be the last one that we conduct, and then obviously it's a big election cycle for the legislature, right? 33 Senate seats and all 99 Assembly seats, if I am correct, Mr. Brooks?
Not all 33, just the even numbered.
The even number Senate
they-
seats, so half of that,
Split them out, but yeah, and then all 99 assembly.
all 99 Assembly. Thank you. So, yeah, so it'll be good to meet with Senator Bradley, and he also sent an email today about, one of his staffers did about Capitol tours. And some of our kids go to the Capitol, fourth grade, I believe, and then Senator Bradley offering to come into classes and things like that too. So it's nice, this is all part of that relationship building, right? So that we have these opportunities to engage and connect and see how we can be supportive of one another as we move education forward, not only in Waukesha, but with them through the whole state of Wisconsin. So it should be fun.
Great. Hubert. I
bet.
I hope people get an opportunity to attend if they're able. Anyone else have any questions or comments regarding the legislative visits? All right, so we move to other business. Item 1, any recommendations for future meetings? Oops, sorry, my mic is off. We're moving to other business. This would be recommendations for future meetings. Do we have any? All right, hearing,
Mrs. Boyd.
yes.
I
Mrs.
just
White.
have a question on the bill that we sort of tossed around the drafting of, I call it Betty's bill, on fire drills and things
Oh,
like that.
sure.
If there's, just where that's at, like the feedback from, her contacts with Scott Allen's office and, the follow-up on that. Just wondering, where that proposal is at. Nothing can happen till after the first of the year anyway, but.
Sure.
but
Would you
just,
like me to put that on for October?
Sure, just-
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Kind of what feedback we've gotten with the legislative visits, et cetera.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you, Mrs. White. Anything else? All right, we have no other business, so with that, meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.